قل بفضل الله وبرحمته فبذلك فليفرحوا هو خير مما يجمعون.
من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد صلاة تخرجنا بها من أوحال الوهم وتوضحنا ما أشكل حتى يفهم، إنك تعلم ولا نعلم وأنت علام الغيوب. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Oh, but the pantomime style, I can't hear you.
Behind you.
So, reflecting on the Prophet ﷺ's migration, I want to start off by just quoting the lines of Imam Busiri in the Burda. These are very beautiful lines to really highlight how important this episode was in the life of the Prophet ﷺ, where Imam Busiri says, I'll just do the translation, "And by the goodness and nobility contained in the cave, while the disbelievers' every glance was blind to him, truthfulness and the true one in the cave wavered not," i.e. the Prophet ﷺ being the truthful one, the truthfulness itself, and the true one, Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu, in the cave wavered not, while they said no one who breathes is in the cave. They supposed that a dove would not perch, or a spider would spin its web for the best of creation. Their protection by Allah absolved them of need for additional armor or for lofty fortresses. This is some of the most the thing about the Burda is, when we recite the Burda, for me personally, is when we read it, certain lines just jump at you, and that can be in different readings and different settings. Different verses can jump out at you, but these are some of the most powerful lines of the Burda. Their protection by Allah absolved them of need for additional armor or for lofty fortresses. The Prophet ﷺ didn't need anyone, didn't need anything. And then, مَا سَامِنِ الدَّهْرُ ضَيْمًا وَاسْتَجَرْتُ بِهِ إِلَّا وَنِلْتُ جِوَارًا مِنْهُ لَمْ يُضَمِ. Some of the most powerful, this is one of my favorite verses. "Never when fate oppressed me have I sought refuge in him, but I found sanctuary with him and was oppressed no more." Whenever I turn to the embassy of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was there for me. "And never have I sought wealth in both worlds from his hand without receiving largesse from the best of givers." And this is the reality of the Prophet ﷺ, is that when the Prophet ﷺ went on the migration, the reality of that migration was he was placing his footsteps in the unknown world. He was traveling beyond his comfort zone in order to show us how to lead our lives. And so he paved the way, he marked the way for where we need to go. And this is why we love the Prophet ﷺ. I always say, if you want to really fall in love with the Prophet ﷺ, then go through experiences and try to connect to what he did in those situations. And when you apply them and it changes your life, it's a natural occurrence, that love. It's not something that has to be, there's no effort needed. It's like when someone's gasping for water, and you give them to it and it quenches their thirst. You don't have to exert yourself and this is quenching my thirst. It's not an intellectual exercise. It permeates your being without. It's just naturally in your cells to just take that on. And that's the reality when we go through our lives and we're reading the life of the Prophet ﷺ alongside our experiences. Boom, that's when it hits us. And that's why I'm very passionate about us meditating upon the themes of the Seerah, rather than us going through the details of the Seerah. I mean, that's been done, and I'm not dismissing that. That's a very important part of our connection to the Prophet ﷺ, is the details of the Seerah and learning more and more about the Prophet ﷺ. But sometimes we can get caught in the details and not be able to pan out and see what's really happening. And this is why one of my goals in life is to link the Seerah of the Prophet ﷺ to the hero's journey, the monomyth of Joseph Campbell's monomyth. And of that is that when someone's on a journey, when someone's being, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed them in circumstances, it becomes so obvious to them they have to take that journey, whether they are comfortable taking that journey or not. And this is the first lesson of the migration. This is a profound example that I've not seen many people highlight, to be honest, is that the Prophet ﷺ's circumstances before the Hijra, what were they? His people were being persecuted beyond belief. Every sort of means for the Prophet ﷺ to take had been exhausted. Now his uncle had passed away, his wife had passed away. There's hardly a ruse left, and now the pressure's getting thick. And so the Prophet ﷺ makes an obvious last resort, which is a wild resort really, is to leave the parameters of his very city and go to another city. And we don't really realize what a major move that is, because in medieval societies and cultures, that means near enough death, basically, because there's no police force to protect you. You were only protected if you stayed amongst your clan. And so the Prophet ﷺ is not just going to any clan, he's going to Ta'if. And so he's reading the signs, the Prophet ﷺ. He's saying, the situation's got so tough on me, I must need to leave now and look for another patch of land, another area to spread this message. It's been exhausted. And so he goes to Ta'if, and we know that he's rejected at Ta'if, and then at this point he is forced to rush into an orchard, a nearby orchard of Ta'if, and he makes that profound dua where he's basically, I don't have a trick left in the book, Allah. And that's a very important step for us all to take in our lives. When all the means have been exhausted and you haven't got a trick left in your book, in your bag basically, you raise your hands and you ask Allah, help me. And the Prophet ﷺ does this, and the sign immediately comes. What's that sign? Is that Addas, the Christian servant of his two enemies. That means when you turn to Allah, even your greatest enemies come in support of you, from whence you least expected it. Addas comes down, he addresses the Prophet ﷺ, and then they engage in conversation. And Addas, when they're engaged in conversation, the Prophet ﷺ discovers that he's from Nineveh, and he goes, my brother's from Nineveh. And Addas says, how do you know this man, Yunus alayhi salam? The Arabs do not have any knowledge of this man. This is a key sign from Allah. The Prophet ﷺ clicks. He says, Yunus left his people before he was given the clear sign. Not that he actually sinned. This is very important, because Yunus looked at the circumstances, and the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was that if a people reject their prophet, the punishment will soon come. So he basically read the signs and left in anger for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But Allah sometimes likes to shift the paradigm, and so that Allah is clear who's the master, and that Allah is not bound by rules. And so this is why we say you can't technique Allah. We have to work with the system. It's imperative, we have to work with the system. But sometimes Allah just shatters even that system, just to prove to us that you can't technique Allah. And sometimes you just got to get on your knees and ask. That's what happened to Sayyidina Yunus alayhi salam. And the Prophet ﷺ clicked. He said, just as Sayyidina Yunus left too hastily, I left too hastily. Rather, I should go back to my people, and I should wait for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to leave me in honor, to leave me with honor out of Mecca. And so this is a very important lesson, that we have to, when we're in circumstances in our life, we have to read what's going on in our lives. How is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where is He leading me? We exhaust the means, but then if they don't work, then we have to open up to Allah and open up to our own vulnerability and say, okay, I've tried my best, what is it? And that's a key point, that's a key situation in our lives when Allah really opens the doors. When you basically just get on your knees and cry, and you say, I can't do this, I don't know what I'm doing. And so we see it open up immediately from that point, from Addas' conversation with the Prophet ﷺ about Yunus alayhi salam. and they go back, the spiritual realm opens up for the Prophet ﷺ. The jinn followed him. He's honoured by a disbeliever into Mecca and protected. And then the Isra and the Mi'raj occurs. And then eventually people come and take the Prophet ﷺ out from Mecca and escort him to Medina, into a place where he will be honoured and he will be the ruler of that city. Here's another key point, that things will always change in our lives. دوام الحال من المحال. A state being continuing and remaining the same is impossible. Things will always change, and we're always fluctuating between three situations in our life: comfort, challenge, and collapse. These are three areas. We are either in our life in comfort, i.e. everything's going easy, we're comfortable, everything around us is what we know. The second area we could be in is challenge, i.e. it's a little tricky, but I can cope with it, and it's something new, and I just have to go with it. Or collapse. What's collapse? A real trial in our lives whereby we're broken. A death of a loved one, a car accident, some sort of, we fail in our exams and so forth, when we have to run back to comfort. That's natural there. When we're completely broken, we have to respect our own boundaries and understand our own weaknesses and turn back to comfort. Now, what's so interesting about this paradigm of comfort, discomfort, comfort and challenge and collapse is that if you stay in comfort, it contracts on you. So a lot of us think, if I stay in my comfort zone, things will always be okay. But that's impossible, because nothing will stay the same. And so if we stay in comfort, your actual comfort starts becoming restrictive on you. You'll notice older people, they don't have as many challenges in their life. They're used to their habits are the same every day. What happens to them? They start getting agitated by even simple things in their lives. We have to constantly be moving into challenge, and when you move into challenge, your comfort zone actually expands. The Prophet ﷺ showed us that we constantly have to be going to challenge. We don't ask for collapse, but we need to be pushing and learning. We need to be in situations that are of slight discomfort, and in that what happens is your comfort zone actually expands, and you're able to deal with more things. And so the Prophet ﷺ is coming out of his comfort zone, and he's coming into an area that is unknown to him. What happens there? When you make that, when you have that trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you go into an area of discomfort, of the unknown, Allah sends His legions to help you. And the most unlikely, look at the Hijra, 3 situations. His own people try to kill him when he leaves. So what happens is, when you actually try to push the boundaries of and you go into challenge, you try to increase your potential, you try to aim for your highest potential in your life, the very people around you may attack you. Look at the other 2 people that attacked the Prophet ﷺ. They eventually submit to him. Suraqa, who's not a family member, and then Burayda. People are less familiar with this story. Suraqa, people are familiar with the story about the bounty hunter that attacks him and then eventually supports him, protects him from people following him. Burayda comes with, it's related, I think 40 men come to attack the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ smiles on greeting him, says, "What's your name?" "Burayda." He says, "Our affair is going to be cool, Abu Bakr." And then he says, "From what tribe?" He says, "From Aslam, everything's going to be safe." "From what sub-tribe of what tribe?" He says, "Saham, well, our shares come out." And they were so impressed with his character, and that he didn't panic, that they accepted Islam, all 40 of them. And so what happens is, when we go into challenge, what happens? The most unlikeliest of people actually come to our support. Sometimes our own family members will criticize us. Sometimes our own family members will actually hold us down, or the people close to us. They won't want us to progress, while the people who are most unlikely will come and support us. That's the message of the Hijra, that the Ansar came to support the Prophet ﷺ, not his own people, the majority of his people. And that when you leave, don't worry, you will always come back. The Prophet ﷺ, when he left Mecca, he turned back and said, "I wouldn't even have left you if my people hadn't expelled me." We don't want to leave our comfort zone, that's natural. We want to stay in that blessed place. But إِنَّ الَّذِي فَرَضَ عَلَيْكَ الْقُرْآنَ لَرَادُّكَ إِلَى مَعَادٍ. Dr. Umar, I don't know where he got this from, something very beautiful. Whenever he visits a place, before he leaves, he does this to what he reads this verse. إِنَّ الَّذِي, verily the one who ordained this Qur'an, this wondrous recitation upon you, will return you without a doubt. He's returning you to and the rad is very interesting, the Arabic language. Rad, okay, is this radduka is going to bring you back, but ma'ad, the aud is a different return. And he uses the indefinite here, a return, to show that you're going to come back here, but it won't be like a return that you imagine. It's going to be something beyond your imagination. And so, and Joseph Campbell speaks about this in The Hero's Journey, that our lives are constantly separation from our current circumstances, initiation into a new circumstance, and return back. But that return back is completely with different lenses. Because when the Prophet ﷺ eventually does come back to Mecca, he's not subdued, he's not weak, he's not rejected. Rather, he comes back in honor. He comes back with a completely different outlook, with a completely different persona, with a completely different role, where his people are completely in awe of him. And so if we can make, the lesson is here, if we can make that migration in our lives, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring you back, whether spiritually He'll bring you back, or He'll physically bring you back, but it will be unlike anything that you imagined before. That's the most important lesson of the Hijra, that we have to constantly be going through cycles in our lives, and things will always change. But as long as we're persevering, we're trying to do the right thing, as long as we're trying to read the signs that Allah is placing, سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَأَنفُسِهِمْ, we will show them the signs in the horizons, i.e. the external world, and within themselves, until it becomes apparent, clear without a doubt, that this is the truth. This is how it will be in our lives, as long as we persevere and we bring people around us who care for us and want to support us and cherish us and rejoice in our wanting to reach our potential, not hold us down. And what's that? What's a sign of someone that really respects you? Is that when you say, excuse me, what you're doing is offending me, and they say, I respect that, and I'm not going to do it. And what do we do, most of us? Oh, sort it out, what's wrong with you? No. Yes, no. I'm not doing anything. It's so funny. One of my friends. This shows how crazy with this postmodernistic world we live in. He said this guy got offended by a woman at work, and he came to her. He says, "Look, I'm really offended by what you said." She said, "I'm offended that you're telling me I'm offended, that you're offended by me."
Did you say to her, yeah. "I'm offended that you're offended by me"?
I mean, you can't win. And so you have to leave it to Allah. And so these are the lessons from the Hijra. Thank you very much. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
I'm very sorry.